There we go.
If anyone doesn't want their photo taken, just like let me know. I'll be taking some photos.
Oh, yeah. It's wrapped.
I want to thank everybody for coming to the Black Lesbian Archives Workshop Archival Project. Remember when I reached out to you, Candace? I think we were supposed to do this, in June?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were supposed to do this in June 1st, but Imani was like, let's just wait. Like, wait till after everything is kind of taken in first, and then we can do the archival project to kind of wrap it in. So I appreciate you for coming through.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And your name again was?
Asti,
and Maggie. Maggie. Thank you for coming. And everybody else too. Like this project has been like eye-opening to the fullest. It's gonna be a lot of good stuff coming through. If you have any archives or you want to talk about maybe some of the archival work, especially when it comes to Black lesbian work, come through to Affinity. We got you, definitely. Yvonne's in the building, got Lucy in the building. Definitely some good stuff coming through. So, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. But other than that, I'm going to let Candace do the thing.
Yeah, thanks, crew. Thanks for inviting me to do this. I'm Candace Ming. I'm the archivist for the Southside Home Movie Project. We collect, preserve, and digitize small gauge film from residents across the South Side. So right now we have about 25 collections, about 300 objects, and we just launched our digital archive, where you can actually search and view everything we've digitized. And we subject tag things by year, by location, and you can actually comment on stuff if you recognize anybody. So, but yeah, I've been doing these type of personal preservation workshops for the past year. I started doing them with Maggie Brown, who's Oscar Brown Jr.'s daughter, and who has his entire archive of paper, screenplays, scripts, musical notations, books, photographs. She has some video. She even has master audio track recordings. And we started it just because she didn't really know what to do. And I also feel like I want to bring my expertise to people to be able to preserve their own film, own material themselves, and what they should do, how they should digitize, how they should store. So I'm going to broadly talk about everything. I normally do one material a session, but we've got a lot of times I can do everything. And then I have some handouts here that talk about paper and book, photo, and then also caring for your home movies and videos if you want to take them. Also, our sign-up mailing list is here if you want to get on here, and buttons and postcards. So I guess I'll start with paper. Paper is probably almost the easiest format in some ways to preserve. It doesn't really need a lot of like cold storage. You can almost store it at room temperature. Actually, that's right. The wheel. Let's see. Paper. Photograph plates. Yeah, this is more media, but I mean, paper is like 60 degrees, 30 to 50% humidity. So that's like your home, you know. But what you want to do is be careful of things like if you have carbon paper, letters, newspaper. Newsprint is also really susceptible to fading because of the dyes and the type of material it was on. It can really yellow and become brittle. So what you would do then is put it in like a clear sheet of like polyurethane or acetate film, just to put it in there, and you can put it in a folder. And all your boxes and folders should say acid buffering or archival box, but be wary of things that just say archival box, because some things say that and they may not really be that. acid buffering means that it's going to try and inhibit the leach of acid off of these materials, which is what makes them decay. So then they have acid buffering folders, they have acid buffering boxes that you can place things in. But yeah, newspaper, carbon paper are probably the most susceptible to that stuff, just because of the flimsy nature of the material. And but letters and things like that tend to hold up pretty well. If you have something very important, again, you can put it in between two plastic sheets. Gives it a stiff backing and protects it, and then you can place it in a folder, and then place that folder in a box. So, so that's kind of what you do, and then you can label the folder, label the box. I think labeling is probably one of the big things people struggle with. I mean, I know in my family, we don't have a lot of paper, but we have a lot of photographs that were actually from my grandmother's mother, and they've both since passed. So I'm going through them and trying to talk to my granddad about who is it and all that stuff, but it's like, he doesn't know, and really the only person we can identify is my great-grandmother. So I think like labeling your photos, and you can just write in pencil on the back, labeling documents, going to your elders to try and get that information now will really help in the long run, because once they pass, that information dies with them. Photos, you want to store in a much cooler environment than paper. I do have photos on here. Let's see. So color film you want to store in a kind of cold 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 30 to 50% humidity, which could be a basement or cooler closet room. I don't like basements because basements can flood. So that's the danger of storing things in a basement. They can also have mold or other environmental things, but perhaps a cool closet in your home, and where it's dark, you could store the photos. And really what you're looking for with color is the color image could decay, the acetate binder that binds the emulsion so photos are made up of the picture layer and then a base that holds it. And for acetate, that can decay, just like with paper, just because of the composition of acetate. And so you'd get kind of like the image starts to disappear or crinkle. And then for color image, the color dyes can also fade and give a weird tint, usually like a red or maybe bluish tint to your films if you've seen that. So stabilizing it and putting it in that cool environment is really important. And for photos, again, you want something acid buffering, but photos, then you also want something that says pass a PAT test, and a PAT test is a photographic activity test. And that means that the materials won't cause any further decay of the color or emulsion binder. So look out for that when you're buying materials. I buy my materials from Gaylord. They're an archival supply company. You can get stuff from actually Dick Blick art materials, like the sheets to put things in. You can actually buy those at Dick Blick. Container Store actually is where I get my archival boxes, if you can believe that. They sell several archival boxes and media storage boxes that do have passed those tests. So yeah. And then the labeling, right in pencil on the back if you know who it is. For photos, you can, again, if you want to put them between some sort of plastic sheeting that has passed that test, and then you can put that in a binder. It's a protective measure. And then for photos, you always want to wear gloves, just white cotton gloves to handle it. If you don't have them, just hold it by the edge so you're not getting thumbprints or other oils on the image surface. Paper, it can actually be more dangerous to handle with a glove because the glove can actually tear, and it's, it can be harder to manipulate. And if the paper's fragile, the handling with a glove can actually be more dangerous. So I actually tend to not use a glove when handling paper. I'm just very careful and hold it by the edges. And then if you have slides like this one's, I grabbed the run roll that's overexposed. But if you have a large collection of slides, I didn't bring the binder I use, but they do sell plastic sheets that can hold 20 slides. And so you can put all those in there. And I like that a little better because then you can actually see the slides. They do sell some boxes that's like an enclosed thing where you would put the slides in a kind of holder and then enclose the box. But I don't like that because you can't see what the slides are. So for our slide collections, I actually use it's about 20 slides to a roll. And then you can these aren't labeled yet, but there is some space, around the edges to write in pencil, who this might be or where it is. And then you can just place it in a holder, and then the binder you get would be acid buffering and archival, and then you can just flip it around. Then you can see what you're looking at. Because a lot of times I think, too, slides don't get developed. So,
how do you develop slides?
I don't know. I'm not sure how they did it back then, but to do a print. Now I scan them digitally and I got them blown up. I actually did that for an exhibition because these slides are from the Jean Patton collection. But people took slides, but then wouldn't make prints, or they would just take slides and do they did have a slide projector and screen, so I'm sure they were look, fill your carousel, and then we're just gonna be this is our vacation, and then they just go back in a box. So that's I think that's how people use slides. They didn't tend to actually make a larger print out of them. But we did that for an exhibition, and then it was really nice because then we were actually able to give them to the family. And there were some great shots of Miss Jean, who donated the collection. And slides again, handled with gloves by the edges. You can find something called PEC cleaner. If you think the surface is dirty, just put some of it on the cloth and gently rub. They also sell blowers. You can blow some of the dust off. I would recommend doing that only if you're going to digitize them, so you can get a clear image. And for slides like these, without a backing, I would recommend a flatbed scanner. Even a home one can be good, but you want to make sure you have a scanner where you can adjust the DPI to at least, for these slides, I would say at least 600 DPI at minimum. Because they're Kodachrome, so there is a lot of great color information in here that you don't want to lose. And so then the higher the DPI, the better the resolution. These are I scan these at something crazy because it's for archival purposes, 4,400 DPI. But I don't think that's not necessary for personal use. And then you always want to scan to a TIFF, which is a tagged image file format. And that is an open archival format that is uncompressed. Something like a JPEG actually compresses the data and you lose data.
Scanning in JPEG.
Yeah. You've been scanning in JPEG?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's okay for what you've done, but if you go forward, try and scan to a TIFF if you can. Because a JPEG is a compression, what we call a lossy format. So when it makes the file, it's actually going to throw out chunks of data to make it, because it's going to compress it. A TIFF does not do that. it's what we call lossless. So, and then you can make a JPEG from a TIFF if that's what you want, if that's what you need to publish or something like, because TIFFs can get pretty large. They can, some of our files may be up to 5 megabytes, which doesn't seem like a lot, but if you have thousands of slides, it gets up there. So I would recommend a TIFF as opposed to a JPEG. And then for paper, the DPI can be 300. It's, there's not a lot of image information in a letter or anything like that. Photos that aren't slides like that, I would again recommend something as high as 600. 600 minimum, and you can go up from there. And also doing a flatbed scanner and not putting it in like a tray or anything like that, because that can damage it. And yeah, for slides, definitely for slides like this that don't have mounts, you want to do a flatbed scanner. There are some scanners where you can just kind of load a rack of slides, but I found with doing these, they get damaged because they're not mounted, and it's just like cardboard. So if you have metal mounted slides, you could put them in something, and then it would feed, and then it would take about 3 hours because it's like a rack of 50 slides to digitize. But yeah, so that's slides, photo books. Okay, so now my real wheelhouse, film. So if you have film, so this is what we collect. This is an 8mm film. It's not one of our unique collections. I think it's a promotional film. When we get collections, a lot of times we also get cartoons or just straight. My granddad has some like golf instructional videos. So I often bring those as like examples. He had golf and bowling instruction videos. So I've been bringing those as examples of what we're looking at. So this is an 8mm film, and what you want to do with film is, film needs to be super cold. So, and especially acetate. So, here's my wheel. I would say 40 degrees, 32 degrees, actually frozen is better, to be honest. Wow. Again, with that low humidity, 30 to 50%. Acetate film is especially subject to changes in temperature and humidity. Fluctuations in that really cause the decay. You're frowning. So you could store it in a freezer or fridge. I would say still a closet, a cool closet is best.
Don't store it in a fridge.
Huh?
Don't store it in a fridge.
The fridge can be tough because of the moisture content. You would have to. We do have films in the freezer, but I have to be on it with moisture and de-ice and all of that stuff. Whereas if it's just like your working fridge, you may not be doing that type of maintenance. So that's why I hesitate on that one, because the moisture can also really affect and damage the film. But I would say a cool dark closet would be best. If you're very sure of your basement's cleanliness and non-susceptible to flooding, that would be best. Or if you can store it on a high shelf so that if it did flood, it would be okay. And for storage, so most of the stuff we get comes in boxes like these. I tend to keep them in boxes, and then I buy those Container Store archival boxes and put these inside. They're acid buffering, so they won't leach acid, but so that any acid is kind of repelled. But I like to keep the boxes because there's often written things on here, and these become archival objects as well. So I don't want to just throw stuff away. And this one is, so this is 8, and this is Super 8. The only real difference is the sprocket holes. The sprocket holes on Super 8 are a bit more rectangular and smaller because they made the picture area bigger. And the sprocket holes are in the center of the frame when you get into the image. For 8, the sprocket holes are more square, and you'll see that they run just kind of along the image line. So Super 8 was not produced until 1965. So if you have anything before then, it's on 8. And then if you put 2 8s together, I didn't bring an example of 16 millimeter, you would have 16 millimeter film. But that's a pretty early format. So that would be 16 millimeter, I've mostly found was shot in the 30s. Because as early as 32, 8 millimeter was developed in 1932. So there's a lot of film from the 30s that's on this format. But, I have film from the 30s, 40s that is on 16. My great aunt shot 16 in the 50s for some reason, who knows why. She just was a very avid photographer. But in general, that's the kind of timeline you're looking at. Super 8 also has an additional, decay thing because some Super 8, I don't think this one has it. Some Super 8 actually has a magnetic stripe because they introduced sound. Is this just leader?
That's fine.
Oh well. Sorry. So that can also affect the how the film decays because of that magnetic stripe, which is usually acetate based. This is just leader. I didn't grab a Super 8 example. And we do have some sound collections in our archive. Because I think they introduced sound probably the late 70s. You could plug a mic into the camera and talk and narrate stuff. And then when you got the film back, you would see a brown stripe running along the edges here. And then a balanced stripe along this edge as well. So that's an additional, it adds to the possibility of decay. For your own films to kind of test, how deteriorated do you think they are? If they smell like vinegar, you're in a very dangerous zone. If they can, because these are acetate-based, and when they decay, they leach acetic acid, which smells like vinegar. So if you just kind of take a whiff and go, oh, it's very vinegary, then you want to get it to an archive, or you could try and put it in the fridge. That would stabilize it, but once vinegar syndrome starts, it just keeps going. We do offer climate-controlled storage options at Southside Home Movie Project, and again, we do full inspection and free digitization of materials. So those are the things you could go to. Chicago Film Archives also does transfer services. They also offer climate-controlled vault storage. But, if you don't have the money for that, trying to put it in a freezer and just being mindful of de-icing a lot, more regularly than you probably could stabilize it. And then color film, if you have color, is also subject to decay. So you can if you come up later, you can actually see that this film is like red. And that's because the dyes have faded. So the dyes are in 3 layers. I think red is the base. So I think it's blue, yellow, red. And so as it fades, those blue and yellow dyes fade away, leaving the film with a red tint. And again, you want to label things. Always use a glove with film. And the next thing is, if you don't know what's on it, don't put it on a projector. If the film is deteriorated, Because again, vinegar syndrome isn't the only, like smelling it is not the only real test to see, because it has to get very far along before that you can smell that, and it may have deteriorated in other ways before you smell the vinegar. So putting it on a projector can actually damage it further. If you want to see the films, you can always make an appointment with me, and I have something that's like a little viewer with a light, and we can wind through the film so you can see what's on it. Or I'll do a quick inspection and be like, hey, this can't go on a projector, and I'll project it for you. But on your own, I wouldn't recommend trying to see what's on the film by putting it on a projector. And then so for video, so this is like VHS-C tape, which you may have shot on. Mini DV is another home format. High 8, that's a real dangerous one. Mostly because there are just like no players for it. But actually Dan, I did a workshop a few weeks ago with Dan at MediaBurn, he's the archivist. And there are little toggles or plugins you can get to transfer your videos on your own. I think the one he has is like called Elgato, ELGATO. And it just plugs into your computer and then would plug into a player. But that's the thing with video, you need a player. So VHS-C is pretty easy because you just need a VHS player if you have one. And then you can buy online, this would snap into like an adapter and then go into a VHS player. High 8 again is the trouble one because like there are just no players. And then mini DV, you can still kind of find pretty regular mini DV decks. If for high 8 especially, MediaBurn also offers transfer services because they have those decks. I think their rates are $70 an hour, and it's expensive. So that's why I would recommend trying to get that plug in yourself, resourcing a deck, and then you can digitize your videos yourself. But digitize now, like our pin says, for video. Film, if kept in the right conditions. So the other side of this is like a support chronology, basically. And, sorry, this is the wrong wheel. I have a wheel that also says how long some people last. But film can last for over 100 years if stored in the right conditions. I've been to the Library of Congress vaults. They've pulled out in 1896, George Méliès, negative. It was in pristine condition. It's been in a climate-controlled vault for the last 100 years. So if you keep it right, film can last for a long time. Video, in perhaps less than 5 years, you're not going to be able to get the information off these tapes. So you really want to try and transfer your VHS, your mini DV, all that stuff right now. You don't need to transfer to an uncompressed format. Whatever the Elgato does in MP4, just something that's viewable is fine. Especially you don't want to uncompress because the storage is insane. And 30 minutes of uncompressed video, I think an hour of uncompressed video is 100 gigabytes. So I do that as an archivist, but I wouldn't recommend that personally for you guys, just because of the storage. I think for video, you just want to be able to see it. And you don't necessarily need that robust of a preservation format. So something like an MP4, even though it's lost, what we call lossy, it's fine. Also because video, like, the information contained on this tape is not great. Like, the resolution is already not great. It's like 680 by 4, like a very 4:3 resolution. It's not, the signal's not great. So I would say whatever format you can get off of it is fine, because the chances are you'll only get one try to play it. You can do a kind of visual inspection of your tapes before you transfer. If you look at the pack here, you can see it's smooth. There's no crinkles. Seeing white flakes here could mean that, again, they used acetate for everything. So all of these formats are subject to that acetate decomposition. So seeing white flakes here could be the acetate leaching off. It could also be mold. So be careful of that. If you see any tapes with that, I'd recommend media burn because they have cleaning machines. And they can also, if it is acetate going to decomposing so badly, they also, what they do is they bake the tape. They put it in like a, what is it, like a vacuum? What does he do? It's like a convection oven, honestly. On a very low heat to kind of fuse the binder back together, and then they get one shot at trying to get some of the content off. And then you can also, so on tapes, there's usually a little button you can press in here and flip it open. And just kind of look and see, this looks good to me. But do you see those white flakes? Do you see, is it mold or something like that? Is there other damage, creases, tears, large strikes in the image? That's something that could clue you in that maybe this tape won't transfer very well. But this one actually looks pretty good. So this would be what they put in the camera. I would also recommend this record tab, turning it to on, so you don't accidentally. This makes sure that you don't record over the tape. Some it's a switch, so you just do off, on. Others for VHS, you actually have to like punch it out. But I would recommend doing that so that when you put it in the player, there's no accidents where you accidentally hit the record button or something and then you're recording over your home movies, you know. So yeah, and in terms of storage, you want, I would recommend external drives. You know, depending on the content, it can be hard to know how much storage you need, but you know, this is 30 minutes, an MP4 copy would be maybe like 2 to 5 gigabytes. So if you have 30 of these, 30 times 5 is 180 gigabytes. I would say that kind of, doing those kind of metrics, and then paper is like 2 megabytes of material. Like paper and photo are 2 to maybe perhaps even 5 megabytes of material with the recommendations I've given you. So they won't take up a lot of space. It's really film and video that will take up the most space on a drive. But if you say, oh, I think I'll need 500 gigabytes, get a 1 terabyte drive. And then what you would do is you would put it in RAID mode, R-A-I-D. So what that does is actually mirror the content on the drive so that if something fails, you still have, I know, it's a lot. I know it's a lot. I have my card here, so if you have more questions, you can always email me and I will go step by step with you on how to do this. But I think the big takeaway is whatever storage you think you need, double it. And
yeah, but it's on the same drive.
It's on the same drive, but it may be a different. So RAID, if part of it fails, you would still have the information. And then
why wouldn't you just get two drives?
Because then, well, what if both of them fail?
Okay, question.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a 1 terabyte thing. Yeah, that thing. So I'm gonna go into that, and so that means it'll be on that copy twice.
Yes. Yeah.
Should I just Google that when I get home?
Yeah, our AAD, put it in RAID mode.
RAID.
How do you put it in RAID mode?
You can Google it. Basically, the problem though is if you already have content on it, you're going to want to take that off. And because doing RAID mode you need to erase it and then put the content back on. So if you have content on, if you could move it to cloud storage briefly, or if you think your laptop can store it briefly, and then put it in RAID mode.
She just said go buy another terabyte thing. I heard her. She just said go buy another terabyte. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
Both you got 1 terabyte, plus you have that 1 terabyte hard drive, that external drive. So you got a 1 terabyte thing.
all you would need to do is move the content temporarily. Because so you would move your content, change the mode of the drive, and then move it back. But the thing with RAID, which is why I said double it, because if you put something in RAID mode, you're going to have the storage. So you're actually going to have only 500 gigabytes to work with because it's going to mirror the content.
It automatically does that.
It automatically does that. So that's why, so even if it fails, most likely the chances are, since you have 2 copies, even though they're on the same drive, you would still be able to get it off.
So one copy if one copy fails, it does not affect the other copy?
Yes, exactly. Also what you can do is, we do Larchivist, there's something called locks. Lots of copies keep stuff safe. So I don't recommend cloud storage as your main preservation thing because that's fraught with it's owned by a third party, where is your data on some server in California. But if you have the external drive plus cloud storage, your content, you can kind of be sure it's pretty backed up.
So before I ask Google, is it possible to buy another drive and hook those 2 drives together and copy from that drive and then just have it in 2 places to keep from
just
keep from having
then you could just do two drives. The thing with RAID is because the mirrored copy, if one part fails, it doesn't affect the other part. What would happen is even though you have 2 drives, they both fail.
But I will put the second one in RAID before
you
over.
copy it. Oh, then that's good. Yeah. And then you have almost 3. And then if you upload the Google Drive or something, you have almost 3 copies. That would be great. I know it's a lot. Visual preservation is. Well, it's just. It's a lot. It's a question of when your drive is going to fail. It's not. Yeah, it's just when. So you have to have some kind of. And that's the cloud storage. I mean, if you use Google Drive, I use Box because the University of Harvard is like unlimited data. But anything like that, you can be kind of like, my stuff is safe. So even when your drive fails, you can erase it, see if it's repairable, and then reload it. So yeah, again, lots of copies keep stuff safe.
I have quite a bit of oral histories on, that we've done that are on external drives, and I have been told that there wasn't enough space on the cloud for that.
Oh, yeah.
So is there a way to put it on the cloud? I mean, if you have an awful lot of material.
Yeah, you have a lot. So that's also you have to pay. So for most cloud storage services, the free accounts come with something like, I think Google's like 15 gigabytes. Apple is 5. Dropbox is maybe 5. And then you would upgrade. I upgraded my cloud thing with Apple, and I get like 100 gigabytes of storage with like 8,000 photos. And
so you just upgrade.
Yeah.
And pay per month or something.
I think it's per month.
Okay.
Like 99 cents. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's not
going to
break your bank. Yeah.
Oh.
Not a lot. I think for 100 gigabytes, I paid $99. And then for the iCloud storage, I'm sure that every other paper storage needs to lose it. But yeah, if you have that problem, just upgrade it, and it's worth it. I mean, because this is your family's materials, but I would impress if you always keep the original. That's also the way to preserve it long term. But don't digitize and then throw stuff away. Digitize plus put things in acid-free containers, put them in a cool storage environment, and you can be sure because also the formats change so quickly, digitally. So you may have to go back in 10 or 20 years and re-digitize for something. Because even like your old Word documents, you can't open a 97 Word doc. I tried to open, my thesis film was in the version of Final Cut, but I just can't And that was just 10 years ago. So that's how rapidly things are changing. So always keep the format. Video is a little different because like it's just going to change. I would say video is the hardest because you want to give it time and then possibly I would just say get rid of it. Yeah, you could even put things on a DVD as another physical storage medium. DVDs but also become obsolete, so that we kind of recommend it. And maybe with DVD, you would but if you just want to be physical, that could be well. And don't trust those old archival things. They sell these like old 100 years archival places. That's why you have to be wary of things that oh yeah. You can change it, but all it's going to do is duplicate things.
So it's not gonna
No, you'd have to rescan the photo for it to be a real. It's okay.
It's easy for us to say.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, because 96 by 96 is almost like web resolution, which is very low. It's tiny. So you want something like 300 dpi is generally publishing quality. And I would suggest then even 600 because there's so much, I didn't bring a photo, but there's so much color and other information in a photo that you want to capture. There you go, yeah. So see, look how much information is present here in terms of the lights and darks, the color, the shadows. 600 dpi will hopefully give a faithful reproduction of that, whereas 96 is not going to.
So literally means dots per inch.
Dots per inch. So the more, the more dots you have, the more it's going to reproduce. So like in 96, it's going to sample like here, here, here. 600 is going to be like got it. So that's why the higher DPI, the higher the resolution.
So if we bring movies to you, digitize them for us?
Yep, for free.
And then you keep a copy, or what's the deal?
We keep a copy. It gets published on our digital archive, which I can show you. If there are films that it's too personal, I'll hide them. But in general,
You put a disclaimer like they're not available.
mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's a collection of. It's not her actual birth, the birth of her son, but she's like in a hospital, and I was like, I'm not gonna show this. So those are personal. So let's see. So this is from the Pitts collection. You can see everything. Most of our films are silent, but we have a few that have sound. They're on the Sasha Food. So it gets published there. We might use it in events. You would get a copy via that cloud storage I talked about. And then I also preserve the digital copy in like 3 different places. And I preserve the uncompressed version. But what I would give to you is an access, like a MP4, unless you specifically request. Yvonne, I know you're a filmmaker, so if you want like a ProRes or something to edit with, I can give that to you. But generally, I just give like a high quality MP4 to people. Some people request a DVD, which I reluctantly make and give to them because it's super hard to do a publishable DVD that you can put in a play. And then so that's part of being in the archive is knowing your things will be online for people to search. We catalog everything. Hasty and Maggie are my expert catalogers. HASI also does inspection. We do a full inspection of your films to make sure there's no measuring deterioration, that vinegar syndrome scale I talked about, repairing splices if there are bad splices, looking up date information, which we can find. There's something called edge code. Looks like this, but it's on the edges of the film. Kodak printed that, which just means these symbols correspond to years that say when the film was manufactured. And if there's no, like this one just says airport, so if there's no other date information, we kind of use that to put that. This means 1986, my birthday.
That's cool.
I'm a nerd who got one tattooed on them. So yeah. And you can see our collections here. I said 25. I think about less than that are online because some are in process. And then you would also just sign an agreement with us that basically says we can use the material. And then we would also film an oral history with you and as many family members as we can get to talk about where you grew up. Jackie always likes to ask what camera you used or who filmed things, where did you go, what schools you went to, and all of that. And then that would also get published. You would have a chance to review it. We would transcribe and review it, and then that also gets published on the website.
So who property does it become?
We do retain the rights, but it doesn't mean you can't use it or exhibit it or make new works or do anything else. I think that was something I couldn't get out of because we were part of the University of Chicago system. And it does make my life easier in terms of like, if the donor dies and then the grandkids are like, why are my films online? And then there's no dispute because I have a signed agreement with them. But I do want to impress upon you that you can do whatever you want with the film. And I do get requests from documentary people, producers wanting footage, but if it's for commercial use, I'm always in touch with you to be like, do you want to be a part of this? Is this okay? This is what they want to use. I usually try and ask for a rough cut just to see how it's going to be used. And then you would also your collection would then be credited in the film if it's used. I get a lot of requests so far, but nothing has actually panned out. So here's all those shoes. These aren't up because they need to be captioned for accessibility. So this is done in 2008.
Did you take still photography or just movie?
Oh.
What was challenging?
Well, I like to try things out.
So yeah, so that's just an example of what we do.
Nice.
This is Alice McClellan who shot the films, and this is his daughter Susan. So again, we do try to get as many family members as possible. If possible, if they're still living, the person who shot the footage, and also sons and daughters and people who may appear in the footage as well. So yeah, this is the one that's captioned right now, and then you can see they lived in the Princeton, Roseland, in the Princeton Park neighborhood. So this is our digital archive. Anything you can click, anything you click, you can watch. So yeah, and then there's also an option. You can do a deposit with us, which would mean we inspect, digitize, and actually return the physical films to you. Or, like I said, we can also store them. So that's up to you, whether you want us to keep them. And we have a climate control vault on campus where I rehouse them and put them in there for long-term preservation.
How long do y'all keep the files?
Forever. And digital preservation is like 30 to 40% of my job. Figuring out, okay, what formats are people moving to, transferring things to both our remote server and also there's now a digital library repository at UChicago, so now I'm in the process of also transferring stuff to them and they'll maintain like fixity data. And I also have stuff on LTO tapes, which are magnetic tape format that a lot of archives use because it is physical. It's a physical tape, but the storage is digital, and it's very good for long-term preservation. I think the current ones you can store about 2.5 terabytes of data on them. And so I have those, and now I need to figure out, there's also a geographic dispersal thing with archives, so I need to figure out what friend can I mail one to, so that if there's a disaster, we still have things on we can still access it. So, but that's an archive, you know. I don't think for your personal stuff, you need to be that robust, but I would still recommend keeping as many copies as you can, whether in the cloud or through external storage, or DVDs. But just be mindful that a DVD is not going to last as long as you think. Are there any other questions? Hi.
Let me just ask one question.
Yeah.
From everything you taught us, and all the in between, what's the most important do and don't for everything?
For everything. I would say do put things in proper storage, like I said. That's the best way to preserve it long term, I mean. Again, with paper, I mean, we have stuff from the 1300s. So again, it is a medium that's pretty robust once put in proper storage. The same with film. Again, like I mentioned, that 1896, that was nearly 120 years ago, and it's still in mint condition. So in the proper storage, things can last, except video. Video is taken out of the equation. The don'ts, don't throw anything away. Again, video's out of that equation. Ignore video because the recommendations are different, but don't throw anything away. Because again, like I said, there may come a time where you need to go back to the originals, and you know, maybe they'll come up with some crazy new digital format, or your MP4 will stop being supported, so you need to redigitize. Or your TIFF will stop being supported for some reason we don't know, so you need to redigitize to some new format. Don't throw anything away. Do put it in proper storage, I would say. Those are the big ones. And then for video, the do's and don'ts, do digitize now, and don't wait.
So I have an old camera. I bought a camera that came with that film. So I should go ahead and just use that, videotape it now, put something on it, because it'll be too late soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you have still the camera, that's another way to digitize it. Because you could put the tape in the camera, and there's usually outputs. And you can use this Elgato thing to plug into the camera and then plug into your computer. So either you just need the camera that was used, or look on eBay.
And the resolution isn't going to be that great, right?
No, I mean, it'll be good for video. I mean, video's already in standard definition, which is not that great a resolution. I mean, that's a 680 by 480 picture.
There's no way to make a better copy.
You could up-res it, but it's not going to really do anything because you're just replicating data. There isn't, like for video and for film, there isn't data for you to, there isn't like extra data for you to capture.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. It is standard definition, and what you get is what you get. Like there's not like some secret hidden data where it's like, oh yeah, it can be 1080p somehow. No, it's always going to be standard definition. You get up-res it to 1080p, but it probably won't look that different because it's just going to replicate what's already there to make it into a 1080 picture.
I have like 100 mini DVs.
Oh, mini DV. Mini DV, you also want to watch out. Look and see if they say ME, which stands for metal evaporated, because that causes more decay.
I I need to transfer all that.
You need to transfer,
You do.
digitize now.
It's gonna get an intern.
Yes.
So the standard video is 680 by 40, did you say?
By 480,
Oh, by 480.
which is standard definition.
Okay.
Whereas now this TV is what? 1080i, 1080p picture. Video is like this.
It's a little
Yeah.
So you could up-res it to make it fit the screen,
Yeah.
but it won't look any different.
It's still gonna look like those home.
Okay, that's my last question. All right. So everybody walked out of here, and they had a video camera, and they had a still camera. And there's this one rainbow in all the time that happens before giraffe running over. What should be captured in film or video? I mean,
A rainbow?
I mean, the scene, because it's going to happen once in a trillion years. But what if we had a choice?
We have a choice. 35 millimeter film.
It should be in film.
35
And
millimeter
35
film.
millimeter
No, I mean, of course it should be in film or should be video.
film.
Why you say film?
Film already has a better resolution than video.
Okay.
For 35 millimeter film, we still don't have the scanning techniques to truly capture the resolution it's in, because there's so much information in each image. So 35 is about this big. 16 people do. I can show you some 16. Transfer it, you can see just how great it is. So we actually partner with the National Museum of African American History and Culture to do our transfers. And so even this is like a 30 megabyte copy, and you can still see how clear the image is. This is what we call a 2K scan. You can go as high as 8K now, which is not necessary for 16, but is close to capturing 35 millimeter. And this looks even better on the higher quality access files I use, but even compressed down like this. That's Jean, sorry. You want to go. That's one of her sisters, Miriam. She's one of 5 children. That's another sister. Top hat is Dad and Mom. Abram and Maury. So this is an Easter Christmas combined reel from 1955.
Wow.
Which neighborhood is this?
They live in Chatham. But I'm still trying to locate the church. He was an AME minister, but they're obviously at some church that I'm not sure of. So yeah, there he is. Sure, this is full tuxedo.
What year is it?
It's 55. It's 1955. So you do have 16 millimeter as late as 1955. My great aunt was also shooting things that late. But the primary format during this time period for home movies would have been 8 millimeter. And what they did for home movies
They
is
were in Chatham? In
I don't know.
55?
See, that's why I don't know where
could
they
have
are.
been in Chatham in 55.
They lived in Chatham.
They lived in Chatham in 55?
She was one of the first people.
Oh.
She was a blockbuster, yeah.
I was about to say, how could they have been in Chatham in 55? It says
St. Mary's. Okay, where is that? Does anyone remember? So it's St. Mary's. So sister. That's Miss Jean.
Look it up.
That's Miss Jean. And those are sisters.
Everybody lived in Brownsville.
Yeah, I mean, they also lived in the Ida B. Wells homes at some point. But I do know that Miss Jean and her husband were the first African Americans to move into 84th and Prairie. And then all the whites moved out, and actually the rest of the Patton family started moving in. So there's actually like 5 of them on that one block.
Do we know what kind of art it is?
St. Mary's. That was my struggle with Googling because I couldn't see what type of church. Like St. Mary's is kind of a common name. But yeah, so that's also the kind of work we do with cataloging. Miss Jean is now 99.
Oh,
We did her oral history 2 years ago, and so she's not, we did it with her niece, great niece, and her niece and great nephew, but it's hard for her to remember that stuff, so.
There's an old St. Mary's Church.
That's the decided light.
Oh, okay.
It's a Catholic church, Real St. Mary's, but the pictures are not.
That was a little space too.
So yeah.
Somebody could probably tell you what block that was.
Yeah, I'll probably just email Gian and ask him. Gian Foreman is her great nephew, and he's in the movies. He's very excited about that. So yeah, so this was done by the National Museum of African American Culture. They also do. The Parade machine doesn't have a magnetic sound reader. I can get the image, but not the sound. So I send it to them, and they give me a wave. But yeah, you can see the clarity of the image.
So you keep a copy of the archives also.
They keep a copy in what they call a study collection. Because they're a museum, they can't accession things like us. They need a curator's approval. So their project is actually more about just kind of scanning and giving people back the material. You can make an appointment with them, and they have all the tape players. They even have audio equipment. If you have vinyl or cassette, they have this big big scanning machine to do film, and then basically they scan it and give it to you on a USB. They're not necessarily keeping things like us, just because it's harder for them to. They need approval. I don't know for them that when I worked at Loma, we actually had a committee that approved what was going to be collected. Yeah, the curators gave recommendations and the committee approved it. So that's why they can't really session it, but they do have what they call study collections, and that's where we go. And that's why that plate is on there, so people know it's not theirs. So yeah.
Remember that president that you
I don't get that one.
I speak for all of us.
So you see, he's a minister. We also have some stuff with him going to Africa and Liberia, Africa, really big. They do that every time. I mean, so what's great about this collection is it's actually stands almost from the 60s to the 80s. And you see Christmases. You see Christmases over almost 30 years. And they delighted in that. There's one in the 70s with Gian in it. And he's riding his bike. But they do like a fashion show. Like they're all coming in their fur coats and dressed to the nines. And when we did the oral history, they said that's what they did for Christmas. That was just their tradition. Everyone would come real dressed up and show off.
And they would film it.
And they would film it, exactly. And then they were like, and it always devolved into some sort of dance, which it did on film. You see them eating and then they're all dancing.
That's so cool. And what collection is the cat? What's the first name?
Jamie. So she and her husband Robert had 100 films. And we figured out because they were actually supposed to shoot. 16 millimeter was not shot by them. That was something where we were talking to them, and her brother came in and was like, I have some film. And he just like, and again, he just went down the block. He lived 2 houses down from her and gave me 5, 16 films. I think it might have been, no, it was her nephew. So I think they were shot by her brother because we had that mission. And then the rest of it is mixed with age and Super 8. And it's they went everywhere. They went on 12 cruises. They went to Venezuela. So there's a lot of cool footage, and then there's a lot of and I figured out